She was one of the brightest students in the country, a volunteer, a leader, a rising star. But one night, she stayed home to study, and by morning, she was gone. Viewer discretion is advised. You're listening to Pale Walks. Eve Carson was born on November 19, 1985, in Athens, Georgia. From early childhood, she was known for her unusual drive and ambition. Eve was the vice president of the student council in her school and volunteered at a nursing home and a shelter for teens affected by abuse. In high school, she also became an assistant in the U.S. House of Representatives and worked part-time in a stem cell research lab. After graduating with honors, Eve enrolled at the University of North Carolina, where she studied political science and biology. Thanks to her outstanding academic performance, she received a prestigious scholarship. Eve was deeply involved in campus life, taking leadership roles in numerous student organizations. On top of all that, she continued her charity work and worked as a science teacher at an elementary school. She also traveled to several countries on humanitarian missions. She spent a summer in Ecuador assisting a doctor, studied for a semester in Cuba, and joined a research group in Egypt. Eve was one of the most remarkable students on campus and had big plans for her future. Even before graduating, she had received a job offer from a well-known company and intended to start working there after receiving her degree. In March 2008, at age 22, Eve was in her senior year of college. At the time, she was renting a house not far from campus with a few friends. On the night of March 5th, around midnight, her housemates went out to a party and invited Eve to join them, but she declined, saying she needed to prepare for her classes. Her friends left without her and returned around 4:30 a.m. As they approached the house, they noticed that the front door was wide open and the lights inside were still on. But Eve was nowhere to be found, and her car was also missing. The scene felt very unusual. Her friends couldn't understand why she would leave in the middle of the night and why the door had been left open. They tried calling Eve, but she didn't answer. Despite their concerns, they thought she might have had an urgent matter to deal with and decided to wait until she returned. However, Eve still hadn't come back the next day. One of her friends decided to go to the local police department and report her missing. As soon as the friend explained the situation, the investigators shared that a young woman's body had been found early that morning, but her identity had not yet been confirmed. When they showed the friend a photo of the victim, she immediately recognized Eve. At around 5 a.m., a woman living about 1 mile from Eve's house called the police. She had been awakened by the sound of gunshots, followed by a piercing scream, and, feeling frightened, decided to report it. Officers arrived on the scene and found a woman's body lying on the ground. She had no personal belongings with her, which made it impossible to immediately identify her. The only thing the investigators could determine was that the victim had died from multiple gunshot wounds. After Eve's friend confirmed her identity, detectives interviewed her neighbors and started to piece together a timeline. At around 12:30 a.m., Eve had been home, studying for her classes, and by 5 a.m., she had been fatally harmed nearly 1 mile away. Now, the police had to determine how she had ended up there and who could be behind this attack. Given that Eve's car was also missing, investigators suspected that the motive might have been a robbery. Supporting this theory was the fact that during a search of Eve's room, they couldn't find her wallet or bank cards, none of which were found near the body either. In addition, medical examiners did not find any signs of assault, which ruled out one of the most common motives. After requesting data on the last known location of Eve's phone, police discovered that it had last pinged near a highway outside the city, but the device was never recovered. It seemed that the perpetrator had discarded it somewhere in a wooded area. Soon after, detectives received their first significant lead. Someone reported an abandoned vehicle that matched the description of Eve's car. It was found just a few miles from her home. The car was handed over to forensic specialists to search for fingerprints and DNA evidence. Meanwhile, they uncovered something else. Experts examined Eve's computer, which she had been using to study, and determined that she had been active online until about 3:30 a.m. That meant she had stayed home for at least 2 hours after her friends had left for the party, and only after that she somehow ended up miles from home. By this point, the news of Eve's death had spread across the city, and students at her university were devastated. Many of them knew her through her involvement in nearly every student organization, and no one could believe she was truly gone. People also began to fear for their own safety, especially since the police had no concrete leads, which only deepened their unease. As a result, the department received hundreds of tips. Students reported anything they thought seemed suspicious, but none of the information helped detectives move closer to solving the case. Before long, detectives finally received a meaningful breakthrough, realizing the offender might have taken Eve's bank cards. They requested data on recent transactions. It turned out that just 18 minutes after Eve last used her computer, someone withdrew $700 in 2 separate transactions from one of her cards. The same person then attempted to withdraw more funds, but was denied due to exceeding the daily limit. The ATM was located near a shopping center on the other side of the town, and investigators quickly requested surveillance footage. On the footage, they saw a man using Eve's card. He was sitting in Eve's car, and it appeared that someone else was in the back seat. Detectives suspected that person might have been Eve, but the image quality was too poor to confirm. Forensic specialists tried enhancing the footage for more details, but it led nowhere. As the police worked to identify the man in the driver's seat, they discovered that the suspect had attempted to withdraw money using Eve's card at several other ATMs around town, none of which had working cameras. This continued until March 7th, when police were alerted to another attempted withdrawal. This time, the person went to a 24-hour convenience store around midnight and used the ATM. However, Eve's bank declined the transaction. Officers rushed to the store, located in a neighboring town, and found an operational security camera. Reviewing the footage from that night, they spotted a different individual using Eve's card, not the same man seen at the first ATM. This led detectives to suspect that either multiple people were involved in the crime, or the original perpetrator had given Eve's card to someone else. Investigators attempted to identify the second suspect, but once again, the poor quality image wasn't enough. So, they turned to the public and released stills of the person to the media. Given the widespread awareness of the case, police received a flood of calls, yet still, none of them led to a viable suspect. That changed on March 12th, when police received a crucial tip. A caller who wished to remain anonymous told them he recognized the man from the second surveillance video. According to him, the individual was Mario Atwater. Detectives began digging into Atwater's background and discovered that he had a substantial criminal record. At just 21 years old, he had been repeatedly charged with robbery, assault, drug-related offenses, and other illegal activity. He had served time in prison, but in most cases was released early. Police also learned that just 2 days after Eve's death, Atwater was scheduled to appear in court for being caught with firearm while on probation. Investigators compared older booking photos of Atwater to the store surveillance stills and concluded that it was indeed the same person. They also found out that Atwater lived near the store in question and headed to his residence. Atwater claimed he had nothing to do with the incident, but the surveillance footage was enough to place him under arrest. Officers then discovered that DeMario was friends with a 17-year-old named Lawrence Lavette, who despite his age, already had several offenses on his record. When detectives looked at Lawrence's photo, they immediately recognized him as the person driving Eve's car in the first surveillance video. Unlike Atwater, Lawrence did not want to surrender peacefully. He barricaded himself inside his home, and the SWAT team had to be called in. When he was finally arrested, Lawrence also denied involvement. Both suspects were taken into custody and held while awaiting trial. Since both suspects continued to insist their innocence, detectives began collecting additional evidence. By analyzing their phone records, investigators discovered that on the night of Eve's disappearance, both Lawrence and DeMaria's phone had connected to a cell tower located near her street, even though the two men lived in another city. This allowed police to piece together a likely scenario. DeMaria and Lawrence had chosen Eve as a random target. It appeared they were simply looking for someone to steal money from and saw her alone at home late night. Based on the ATM footage and the attempts at withdrawals, investigators believed the suspects forced Eve into her own car and drove her to multiple cash machines, where she revealed the PIN code to her card. After being unable to withdraw more than $700 due to the daily limit, the men drove Eve to a remote wooded area on the outskirts of the city, where they ended her life. Given the severity of the crime, the prosecution announced their intention to seek the death penalty for DeMaria Atwater. In Lawrence's case, things were more complicated due to his age. He was still a minor, so the maximum penalty he faced was life imprisonment. However, the prosecution knew that the existing evidence might not be enough for a guaranteed conviction. Therefore, they decided to offer Atwater a plea deal. If he confessed, they would take the death penalty off the table. DeMaria agreed. He confessed that on the night of the incident, he and Lawrence had planned to commit a robbery and make some money. According to DeMaria, Lawrence had called him and suggested they head to the college area to look for a potential victim. While driving down the street, they spotted Eve through a window and broke into the house with weapons. The two forced Eve into her car and drove to several ATMs. The entire time, she begged them to let her go, promising she wouldn't report anything to the police. But they had other intentions. DeMaria admitted that they decided to end her life because she had seen their faces, even though they had made no attempt to conceal them. Eventually, they drove her to that empty street and shot her multiple times with 2 different guns. He also added that shortly before she died, Eve asked them to pray with her, but instead, they coldly executed her. In April 2010, 2 years after Eve's murder, DeMaria Atwater was found guilty. Because of the plea deal, the judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 30 years. After the verdict, DeMaria addressed Eve's parents, apologized for what he had done, and stated that he deserved any punishment for his actions. As for Lawrence Lovett, he continued to deny his involvement. His trial began in December 2011. Despite his attorney's efforts to convince the jury of his innocence, DeMaria's confession, combined with the evidence, was enough to convict him. Lawrence was sentenced to life imprisonment. However, his story didn't end there. In 2013, a state appellate court overturned the sentence, citing a legal precedent that stated life without parole for juveniles could be considered excessively harsh and unconstitutional. A new trial was ordered. This time, Lawrence was more vocal. He stated that everyone makes mistakes and that he was not the monster people thought he was. Still, he showed no remorse for what had happened. In the end, the judge once again sentenced him to life in prison. It's worth noting that Lawrence was suspected in another similar case. In January 2008, a few months before Eve's death, someone broke into the apartment of a 29-year-old student and killed him. Several withdrawals were made from the victim's card at various ATMs. However, detectives were unable to gather enough evidence to formally charge Lawrence, and the accusations were dropped. Eve's case not only drew national attention but also led to changes in state law. In the summer of 2008, lawmakers passed new legislation increasing penalties for crimes committed as a part of a group. The university where Eve studied established a scholarship in her memory and created a memorial park on campus in her honor. In 2009, one of Eve's close friends became a finalist on American Idol. On stage, he shared how her death had inspired him to take a chance and audition, and that without her, he would never have achieved such success. Thanks for watching. If this case resonated with you, consider subscribing, turning on notifications, and letting me know what do you think about this case in the comments. And what's more important, stay vigilant. Until next time.